Before we hop into this episode, I have one favor to ask of you. If you've got any kind of information or inspiration from this podcast, it would mean the world to me if you hit the subscribe button. Just like most podcasts out there are more people that watch this show that are not subscribed than that are subscribed. And so if you want to help me get bigger and better guests for this show as we go along, and I hope you do stick along, it would mean the world to me to hit that subscribe button so that we can make it happen. Thank you. Let's get into the interview. You died for 6 minutes. You lived through one of the rarest forms of cancer, went through moving in with your father back when you were 30 after finding a successful in career. What do you wish people knew about those, experiences that you feel you wish you probably could have avoided, but really built who you are?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is if you knew who I was my entire life growing up, and there's still remnants of that, like just a mediocre mindset, like nothing special, not exceptional. And what I mean, like for comparison, is we all know those people that like they excelled at everything they did when they were younger, right? Like, man, they were super smart and they were charismatic, or they were great in sports, like everything they applied when they were young. And maybe that's because of their parents' influence or whatever. But like for me, I was a total screw up. I got C at best. I got C average grades. I never played sports in school, so I never excelled at anything. Until I was 19 years old. I started in sales, and I know that's relatively young, but still the first 2 decades of my life, it was pretty much mediocrity. And so, there's a great quote. It's almost probably cliche at this point, from Tony Robbins: "In our moments of our moments of decision, that our destiny is shaped." And on my second day of Cutco sales training, I decided I'm tired of settling for less than my best. And I adopted a belief, James, that I think is one of the most important beliefs for us all to adopt, which is if another human being has done something, accomplished something, overcome something, they're not better than me or different than me. They are showing me what's possible for all human beings. Because we all started at the same place, trying to learn how to walk, and had to overcome fears and insecurities. So that's the point. It's like if you see like the bio or the accomplishments or what I overcame, and you think, oh man, I couldn't do that. Like, no, you can do that. And it starts with the belief that you're just as worthy, deserving, and capable of doing anything in your life that you want as any other human being on the planet. And yeah, from that place, it's like, okay, yeah, if I can believe that I'm just as worthy, deserving, and capable, I can do anything. Let's go.
Yeah, that is the core of this podcast, right? Is we grow up with so many limiting beliefs and so many beliefs that we really didn't ask for, nor did we realize that we adopted from our parents. And so if we're able to unlearn those things and take on that kind of mindset, it's amazing to see what is possible. And from your experience, I mean, even through cancer, the optimism and belief and just resilience that you had when they literally thought that you were delusional, because we have this belief that because something happens, negative happens, we have to respond negatively. When did you, because I mean, you were 19 at Cutco, but you'd always been mediocre. I think you had the most hours of detention in your high school.
That's accurate.
How did you get from that person to this delusional belief in life to be able to overcome, cancer seemingly by yourself in a lot of ways?
Yeah. So, and I'll correct you in just saying definitely not by myself, a lot of support, but it did stem from myself, right? It wasn't borrowing it from anybody else. Like I was the lighthouse, if you will, right? Like, meaning I was like, I got to shine the positive energy and belief and faith on this experience, from internally and outside of myself. But to answer your question, it was when I was 19 and I started in sales, it was really so much the credit goes to a mentor in Cutco. He hired me to sell Cutco. He was the number one manager, or at least he was trying to be the number one manager in the history of the company that year, and be the first manager to ever do $1 million in a single Cutco office. And the company had been around for 49 years, and he was only 23 years old. So a pretty young guy. I was 19. He was 23. I looked up to him. And it was really believing in the belief that he had in me until my belief caught up, which took a while. But in fact, it's still catching up. I'm 45 now. The belief is still catching up. Like I still have days where I for sure doubt myself and have insecurities and fears and, and that kind of thing. But yeah, it was his belief, like, Hal, I see something in you. I believe you can break this company. I was trying to break the all-time company record in my first 10 days and sell more Cutco than anyone ever had. And I was scared and I didn't know if I could do it. And he's like, I see something in you. I believe that you can do it. And I can show you the way, but you've got to be committed at a level you've never been committed to anything in your life. And so those 10 days changed who I was as a person fundamentally, because I had never been disciplined at anything in my life. I had never committed to anything. I had never excelled at anything. And thanks to this mentor who was believing in me and holding me accountable. Like every day I had to call him in the morning when I woke up. Hey, I'm awake. I'm about to get on the phone and make my sales calls today. And he'd go, okay, make 10 calls, call me back. And then I'm going to fire you up. I want to report. You make 10 more. So I'd make 10 calls. And sometimes nobody would answer. People would hang up with me. They'd be mad at me, whatever. And I'd call him like, oh man, the morning went terribly. Like, I don't know what to do. And he would go, okay, hey, look, you can't change what happened, those 10 calls, but you can make 10 more and let's see what, your luck might turn around. And maybe it won't. Maybe it's going to be tomorrow that things go well, but you only know that if you get through the bad to get through the good, right? And I'm like, okay. But all of this is to say that having someone in your life, a supportive person like that, someone whose it was his mindset that was affecting mine. And here's what I'll say. If anyone's listening to this and they're like, I don't have that person, dude. I don't have that mentor. I'll say what you were sharing with me earlier, right? Rob Dial impacted your mindset through his podcast, right? Like you weren't you eventually got to know Rob and hired him and he became your coach, right? But it started out with a podcast. To me, every single book that's been written, right? That's a mentor. That's someone I can learn from and adopt their mindset. In some ways, books are extremely effective because it's not just somebody spitting, like talking off the cuff. It's like they had to spend maybe a year or longer. Miracle Morning took me 3 years to write. So it took me 3 years of putting my best wisdom and knowledge and ideas into the format of a book that could transform someone's life. And so your mentor doesn't have to be somebody that you can reach out and touch. It can be the books that you read. It can be the YouTube videos that you watch. It can be the podcast that you listen to. But finding people who have a mindset that is beyond where yours is currently, and they believe in you because they've overcome the same or similar challenges and fears and limiting beliefs that you have to get where they are. And if you can borrow their belief the way that I borrowed my mentor Jesse's belief, eventually through trial and error and eventually getting some wins under your belt, your belief catches up and you're like, okay, maybe I don't have to be average anymore. I can do whatever I put my mind to,
It is so true. The amount of people that I know from Cutco through Rob and so many other people, it's astounding. But it seems like there was so much, not only, business and sales perspective, but so much mindset. I mean, from can't change it to the 5-minute rule. I mean, Rob would always tell us that you can do anything for 30 days. And that belief just solidified in me. And the award behind me is my 10K in 30 days. And I did it within my first 30 days. Was the youngest person to ever do it at the time. And even now still. And it is so important to find someone that can believe in you more than you believe in yourself. That's what I found. And you're right. It starts with books, starts with listening to podcasts, and then taking the initiative and taking the leap that you're probably not ready for. I know I definitely wasn't. And I think it's so empowering. I'm curious for you with your kids, how are you being that person for them? And how are you, what beliefs do you hope to instill in them?
Yeah, I think that's, having children. My daughter is 15 now, which is crazy to have a 15-year-old daughter, right? My little baby, like all the parents when your kids are young, they're like, cherish it. It goes by so fast. I'm like, I think it's going perfectly, man. I don't, I don't think it's going too slow. It's going just right. But yeah, once they're 15, you're like, what happened? So anyway, the point is my daughter's 15, my son is 12. And, leading by example is to me the greatest responsibility that a parent has. And that is my fuel. Like I have a responsibility to fulfill my potential, not just for me, but for the people I love and the people that I lead, because in fulfilling my limitless God-given potential that we all have, this limitless potential within us to do more, become more, contribute more to the world, by fulfilling our potential, we then become qualified to help other people do the same. So to me, that's the greatest gift you can give to others, is to actually focus on yourself to fulfilling your potential in service of other people. So now my daughter, right, she's got big dreams of being an actress and big goals. And I think it's because, or I would hope, part of it is like, oh yeah, dad goes after his goals and dreams. Like dad doesn't settle for less than his best. Dad believes he can do anything, and I watch him try, and I've seen him fail and stumble, and I saw him get cancer and come through that, and like, so that to me is the biggest thing, is just living your life, living to your full potential in front of your kids. And if you don't have kids, you owe it to your peers, you owe it to your friends, right? That one of my favorite, and again, another cliche philosophy, although Rene Rodriguez, the author of Amplify Your Influence, Rene and I have become friends recently, and he said something I'd never heard before. He said, Hal, life's greatest wisdom is found in cliches. I go, what do you mean? I don't get it. I'm not understanding. And he said, think about it. What's a cliche? It's a piece of wisdom that's been repeated so many times because it's so true that we become numb to it and we dismiss it. We're like, nah, yeah, believe in yourself. Get it. I've heard it. Never mind. I need the new cutting edge strategy that no one's ever heard before, right? When the reality is, right, that think about that. The greatest life-changing wisdom is found in cliches. So one of my favorite philosophies from one of my favorite philosophers is Jim Rohn, who said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And the number 5 is I mean, it could be the 3 or the 1 person you spend the most time with, right? That's who influences your thinking and your standards. So you think about it. If the 5 people you spend the most time with, or 3 or 2 or 1, are lazy and talk negatively about themselves and settle for less than they're capable of, and make excuses, right? That's the standard that you're being influenced by every day. But if the 5 or 3 or 1 person you spend the most time with, like, they're like, let's go after it, man. Let's achieve in this world, in life. Let's not settle for less. You're like, oh, okay. I guess that's what we're doing now. And so my point is this. Yes, that lesson, like, you need to make sure you're around, 5 people or 3 or 1 that have aligned vision and values that you do, that are aligned, that are moving in the same direction, that hold you to higher standards, that push you and inspire you. I make sure that I'm really intentional about my friends that I spend time with, that they're those type of people. But more important than that, be that person. Like, you need to be someone that the person that's looking for their 5 goes, dude, I want James in my 5. Like, I want James in my 5. He builds me up. He's going after his goals and dreams. He pushes me. He challenges me. He doesn't settle. And when I feel like settling, I think of James. I'm like, I can't settle. Like, come on, man, let's go. So that's, I think, one of the most important philosophies. And like that mentor, Jesse, he became my number 1 person that I spent my time with. And then I started associating with other people in Cutco that were really striving for big goals. And we all formed our little group of like, hey, let's support each other and bring others up. But again, be that person first and foremost.
You have to be that person. Yeah. There's another quote that I've heard you say a lot that has resonated so deeply with me, is your professional development will seldomly exceed your personal development. And it's like, if you don't have those 5 people, books, podcasts, those people can be those people. I mean, I remember working at Dick's Sporting Goods, listening to audiobooks as I'm working, because I was not surrounded by anyone, but I was listening to people that I want to be surrounded by. And so that's where the podcast really came from. And
real quick, James, let me just speak on that quickly. One of the best-selling books of all time, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Napoleon Hill talked about this concept where he had on his wall, he had 5 framed photographs of people who he wanted in his circle of influence. It was like J.D. Rockefeller, Carnegie, I can't think of all of them. But he would literally look at them, and he had read their books and he had studied them, and he would ask, like, hey, J.D. Rockefeller, what would you do in this situation? And he would just close his eyes and like meditate or pray, or right. And he's like, I would literally have that wisdom. He goes, and whether this is spiritual and it's collective consciousness, there's a lot to that. But the point being, he believed that even if they're not actually in your life, but just their essence, their mindset is in your proximity, that's going to influence how you think and how you show up in your life.
There's so much power in proximity. So much power. I realized it when, like, for Cutco, for you being surrounded by those kind of people, it really amplifies your idea of what's possible. And going from seeing yourself as a mediocre person to getting into sales and crushing, the selling goal for in 10 days, it's astounding to see what's possible. And that's just an amazing example. Talking about example, like you said, you have to be the person. when you got cancer, the doctors told you that the diet wouldn't matter, and you pretty much devoted your life to figuring out the diet because you had a 20% chance of living. And then when
Yeah.
also, I don't think a lot of people know about this as well. When you first released the book, I think in 2008, you sold about 5,000 copies through cold calling. And
Yeah.
not only that, you also have committed your life to obviously the Miracle Morning, which most people know you by. You are someone that is truly committed to things. There's no interest in it. I think there's a
Mm.
big difference between being committed and being interested. What do you feel is what most people mistake? What's the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to really fully committing to themselves?
I think it's fear. And
Mhm,
it's something that I wrote about in the Miracle Morning that I called rear view mirror syndrome. And I
mhm,
thought I made the concept up, and then somebody commented, they're like, "You didn't make that up. Somebody else made." I'm like, oh, I wasn't trying to like take credit for somebody else's work. But anyway, rear view mirror syndrome is what I define as like whenever we're presented with an opportunity or a challenge, big or small. It could be the opportunity to get out of bed in the morning when the alarm clock goes off, or
mhm,
it could be a huge opportunity like, hey man, there's this, if you do you think you can make $1 million or whatever. We check our rear view mirror in our subconscious, and we're like, okay, wait, how do I normally respond? What's the evidence in my past that says, that informs how I should respond now, or
mhm,
informs what I'm capable of doing, right?
mhm,
And so when I started selling Cutco, my rear view was like just pure mediocrity. I'm like, I've never been disciplined. I've never been committed to anything in my life. And again, I don't know if I think I might have said this already, but I didn't put it this way. When I came to my mentor Jesse on the second day of training, I'm like, I want to break the all-time Cutco fast start record, Jesse. I think, why not? Why not me? And he's like, how? That's awesome. But he goes, I just want to challenge you. I hear that every week in training. I run training every week. We have 10 to 15, new sales reps that come through training. And he said, somebody always tells me they want to break the record. He said, I've been a manager for a few years now. Do you know how many people have broken the fast start record that said they wanted to do it? I said, no. He said, zero, none. Nobody's broken the record. I go, oh. He goes, you know why that is? I said, no. He said, because they haven't been committed. I
mhm,
go, okay. He said, if you want to break the record, I believe you can do it, but you have to be committed at a level you've never been committed before. We have to dedicate these 10 days. It's only 10 days of your life, but you've got to dedicate these 10 days to work from morning till night. This is your number one singular focus. You're not looking for balance during these 10 days. You're looking for a unwavering commitment to do everything in your power to break this record, which means you're doing something that no one in 49 years has been able to do.
mhm,
And when he's like, are you willing to be committed at that level? And James, I'll be honest, inside my rear view mirror syndrome, my voice of like, I'm like, hell no. Like now I'm scared, right? But
right.
I was embarrassed to say anything other than, yeah, totally.
Mhm,
I'm committed, right? And so that's where I went from never committing to anything my entire life to being committed. But an important piece is it wasn't alone. If I didn't have Jesse, and this is where accountability comes into play, one
mhm,
of the most underrated keys to success is figuring out how to have someone or something hold you accountable.
mhm,
We will let ourselves off when nobody's looking. Rear view mirror syndrome wins most of the time. It's like, nobody's looking. I don't have to do the thing. I know I said I wanted it, but I don't feel like it now, so I'm not going to do it. But when you have somebody holding you accountable, when I had to call Jesse every morning because I gave him my word that I was going to do that, that's how I developed the ability to be committed. It was by making the initial commitment that in my body, in my soul, I didn't feel committed.
yeah.
I just felt embarrassed to not follow through with what I said I was going to do to someone who I respected and didn't want to fall short of. Right. And that later that came with hiring a coach. I paid a coach to hold me accountable later in my life. But so yeah, that's when that started, is being committed. And here's the deal. It wasn't like I broke the fast start record and then I'm like, now I can commit to everything. It was still like I'm a relatively uncommitted person. And
Mhm,
so I wasn't committed to a healthy diet. I didn't commit to exercise. Like that all came way later. It was like, okay, I committed to break the fast start record and I did it. Now, but I did it with the support of my mentor. I called him every single day, like 3-4 times a day. And I felt like giving up so many times. And I'd call him and go, dude, I didn't sell anything today, man. Like, there's no way I'm gonna break this record. I'm embarrassed. Like, I feel like giving up. And he would say, Hal, you feel like giving up. That's normal. He said, let me ask you this. Do you want to be successful in life? And James, anybody listening to this, I would encourage you all to ask yourself this question. As rhetorical as it might sound, there's value here. He said, Hal, do you want to be successful in life, in general, whatever you end up doing in life? If it's not Cutco forever, that's fine. You want to be successful? I said, yes. He said, what do you think a successful person would do right now? Do you think they would give up because they feel like it and they're discouraged and they had a setback? Or would they follow through with their commitment until the end, no matter what, no other option? And of course, I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess they'd follow through. He goes, okay, so what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Damn it. Okay, I'm going to follow through, right? Like I'm going to get on the phone and make more calls, right? And it's really that simple. But here's the thing is we have to commit. Then we have to have someone holding us accountable. And by the way, the accountability could be literally, you could call a friend and go, hey, I'm making this commitment. And every day I don't follow through, I'm going to check in with you every day. So you have to initiate the accountability. Don't wait for somebody to show up in your life. You have to take ownership and responsibility to initiate the accountability. And when you do, you say, okay, I will, you call a friend and you go, hey, I'm going to give you $10 every day that I don't do this. Okay. I'm going to text you every day by 9 a.m. And then like literally write up a contract. And you could print it on your computer, super simple, that says, hey, I'm committed to calling James every day by 10 a.m. or texting him with letting him know that I made, X number of calls or did X number of push-ups or wrote for an hour or whatever your commitment is. And for every day that I don't follow through, I will pay him $10. And then I would go a little further just to hold yourself really accountable. I go, and I commit to maintaining 100% integrity and never lying about what I did or didn't do, right? Because we're all kids in older bodies, right? And very often, even somebody with morals will lie, not because they're a bad person, but because the little scared kid is coming out and goes, oh man, I don't want to look stupid and him think I didn't follow through when I said I would, or, oh man, I can't afford to pay him $10, and then we lie. So make sure that in that little handwritten contract or that you type on the computer where you're establishing accountability with someone in your life who you care about and who cares about you, right? And put something at stake. That's, again, if you don't have a Jesse in your life that'll hold you accountable, it's your responsibility to initiate accountability with another person. I don't know where I was going with that, but hopefully that's been helpful.
1000%, man. One saying that Rob always said is he would never call people out, but he's going to call people forward. And I really like that perspective because you're right. I mean, we all need accountability. We're all too close to our problems to overcome them. We just need someone else to hold us accountable to do the thing we said we would do. And for me, when I jumped into the coaching program, I was investing more money I had in my bank account. So I was forced to make it happen. Otherwise, I literally didn't have a way to afford the program in itself. Yeah. And I think putting your back against the wall, taking on more than you can handle is a really effective way to taking on accountability when you're probably not ready for it, because going out and searching for accountability is terrifying for a lot of people because they don't want to take accountability to begin with. But to be the one to initiate it and go seek it is even more difficult.
Yes.
The morning routine is something that I found is a ritual for me. I can't live without it. It's something that's so massive. It's an amazing thing that you're on the podcast. And I came across the 5 a.m. club and so many other things and just realized most successful people have some kind of morning ritual in some way or shape or form. But even for you, you didn't consider yourself a morning person. I don't think most people consider themselves a morning person, but 6 months later, it changed your life. And now, you millions of copies later, it's changed everything. What is this thing around morning routines? Why is it so, why is it that most successful people have something in their morning?
Because how you start anything sets the tone for the thing that you're doing, right? And most people have a really subpar start to their morning. You hit the snooze button a few times, which is literally procrastination. Like, think about that. You're procrastinating on the act of starting your day. And people wonder, why am I a procrastinator? Well, how you start the day sets the tone and the context and the direction for the rest of your day. So if you hit the snooze button, or let's say you don't hit the snooze button goes off, you get out of bed, and first thing you do is you grab your phone. What happens is, which is many of us do, you are now reacting to your notifications, to your text messages, to different stimuli on your phone. Therefore, you are putting yourself in a state of reactivity versus proactivity or creativity. So people are now spending their entire day in a state of, they're reacting from the moment they wake up, and now they're reacting to the demands and the distractions and they're not creating the life they want because they're reacting to the life that they have or the life that's being presented to them. So the reason a morning routine is so crucial, and a large majority of highly successful people do it, is again because if you start your day in a positive, focused, proactive, disciplined way with a morning ritual, mine's called the Miracle Morning. That's what my book's based on, of course. But if you start your day with that type of morning, you are setting yourself up to be disciplined, focused, positive, proactive, motivated, consistent throughout your day. And if you do that morning routine every day, you set yourself up to win the day and then win in life.
Yeah. Hal, I have to say, I was doing the savers before I knew what it was. And so to come across it and see the idea of it and actually have an idea to attach it to, it was so empowering to hear. There's a reason that it resonates with so many people. And I know that affirmations is the biggest thing that most people get wrong and overlook. And I definitely want to dive into that. Yeah. But visualization was one of the things that I first started, and I didn't realize how impactful it was for me. And I still do it. I did it right before this podcast. It's one of the most important things in my life. And for you, you went from running about a mile to running an ultra marathon and using visualization to really help you excel in that. How has visualization really played a big role in your life? Because it seems like it has.
Yeah. And ironic, actually, make sure after I share this, I want to hear how visualizations impacted you. I really want to hear that, James. Yeah. I'm curious. So because that was actually, and to this day, that's probably the most challenging aspect of the Miracle Morning to me. It's the one that doesn't resonate. When I do it, it's impactful, but it's I resist it. I don't want to do it or whatever. But here's how it made a difference in my life. So to your point, I had committed to running a 52-mile ultra marathon. And this was a year, roughly, or probably 6 months when I committed after the Miracle Morning, after I started the practice, because I just started getting the Miracle Morning changed who I was again. Where in 2008, when the economy crashed, I was at the lowest point in my life. Financially, I was in debt. My house was foreclosed on. You mentioned I had to move back in with my dad. Now, it was before I moved back in with my dad, when I was still trying to figure out where I was going to live, that I came with the Miracle Morning. But after it started changing my life and I turned my financial situation around, that was the biggest thing. That's why I called it the Miracle Morning, because in the first 2 months, I doubled my income at the height of the Great Recession. And it felt like a miracle. And it was called because of the morning routine. So I was like, this is my Miracle Morning every single morning, right? So that's how it started. Well, 6 months later, I was like, what's the next challenge? How could I challenge myself to do something that I've never done before? And a friend of mine, he founded a nonprofit organization called Front Row Foundation. And they did a charity run every year. And he reached out. He's like, hey, you want to run this year for the charity? I said, he's like, you want to come run the Atlantic City Marathon with us? I said, dude, I hate running. No, sorry. I love the charity. I will I'll support you. I'll donate money, but there's no way that I'm going to run 26 miles. He's like, all right, let me know if you change your mind. And then somewhere, it was probably the next morning in meditation or falling asleep that night, at some point, it crossed my mind wait, why am I saying no to this? I'm putting a limitation on myself saying, I can't do it. I hate running. I'm not a runner. I was like, well, that doesn't serve me. What if I did the opposite? What if I committed to do it, to run 26 miles, which to your point, I had never run more than 1 mile. And that was in high school PE class when they made you do it. And I got a terrible time and I hated it. Right. And then I never, literally 0 times in my life had I ever run outside of high school PE class. And at that point I was 27 years old or something. So almost a decade without running. And I thought, I just started journaling about it. I'm like, what would it mean if I committed to run a 26-mile marathon, and who would I have to become? And that's what got me. Who would I have to become to be able, from where I am now in terms of my mental, physical, and emotional limitations around this idea, who would I have to become to run 26 miles? And I called him back, my buddy, and I said, hey, I'm going to do it. And it's it's even hard for me to say it now, even though I did it. My brain, I'm still that kid that's how could I pull that off? But I'm hey, I'm going to do it. And after a few weeks, I had another friend that had run a 52-mile ultra marathon. So I'm like, dude, if I could run 26, why not 52? Kind of delusional there, but
I get it.
I
I
was
get it.
like, he did it. But it's the belief, James, that I shared in the beginning when I decided to break the Cutco record. If another human being has done something, that's evidence of what's possible for all of us, for you, for me. So I'm like, oh wait, he ran 52 miles. In fact, I had two friends that had done it. I'm like, I'm going to commit to that. So then I committed to that publicly on Facebook with everybody I knew for accountability. I committed. I said, hey, I'm going to train. I'm going to post about it because I need y'all to hold me accountable. So I'm initiating this accountability. Here's how visualization made it possible. Every day I did not want to run. Didn't like running. You know, when I did run, it was painful. I hurt. My hips hurt. I'm like, I'm not a runner. I hate this. I can't even run for like 5 minutes. How am I going to run 52 miles? And then I went, okay, I'm going to apply my miracle morning, and not just running. The R in Savers is reading. I bought a book called The Non-Runner's Marathon Trainer, which helped you with the psychology of committing to a marathon when you had never been a runner before. Because it's different if you've run a 10K and you're like, now I'm going for a marathon, versus I've never run. I hate running, and now I'm running a marathon. So I bought a book on that topic. Then I used my affirmations to affirm, number one, what I was committed to. Number two, why it was a must for me. And number three, which actions I was going to take and when. That is the Miracle Morning Affirmations formula. You don't affirm some magical result that's independent of your effort. You affirm what you're committed to in any area of life, why it's a must for you, and which actions you're committed to taking. So then I would affirm those, and I'll actually repeat that in a second. But then I would visualize. And here's the way to think about it, y'all. This isn't creating a vision board and magically that mansion on the wall and that Ferrari and that six-pack. It's magically going to happen because I cut pictures out of a magazine and I put them on the wall. That's not how it works. Visualization is mental rehearsal. It's you visualizing yourself doing the thing you need to do today that will move you in the direction of your most important goals in your life. So you're visualizing, you're mentally rehearsing yourself doing the thing today, going for the run, picking up the phone and cold calling those people that you're scared to call, right? Right, you know, whatever, sending out those resumes, like whatever it is that you need to do. And when you mentally rehearse it, you do it while putting yourself in a peak mental and emotional state so that it compels you when it's actually time to pick up that phone or go for that run. You've already been there. You've imagined it. You've visualized. You vividly have embodied it with your not just seeing it, but with your emotions, every fiber of your being. So what I would do is I would visualize crossing the finish line. That is part one. That's where you do visualize what's your outcome. What are you working towards so that you can see it and feel it and be motivated, fueled, drawn toward that outcome. But that's where most self-help gurus leave it. They're like, just see it.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, okay, but if all you do is that, you're going to trick your subconscious into thinking it's a foregone conclusion independent of any effort on your part. So the most important part of visualization, after you see the end result and you feel what that's going to feel like so that you're motivated, you're energized for it, the most important part, James, is that you visualize yourself doing the thing you need to do today while putting yourself in a peak emotional state. Here's what I did. I'd see myself crossing the finish line for about 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds. That's part one. Great, easy. Okay, I know what I want to do. I'm excited for that. Now, part two of visualization, the most important part, how am I going to make it happen? I would literally close my eyes and imagine my iPhone beeping. I would hear it beep in my head. I would look down, and almost like a first player shooter game where you see your hand out in front of you, I would see my hand reach out, pick up my phone, and I would imagine myself seeing the screen say 7 a.m. and the alarm going off, because that's when I set the timer for my run. I would see myself turning it off, standing up, walking out of my living room into my bedroom. I literally saw it like I was in my eyes, watching myself do everything I needed to do to go on that run. I'd see myself go in my closet. I would get myself dressed. I would then go mentally rehearse walking through my living room. I can still see it to this day, by the way. I see the exact house I haven't lived there for 15 years, but I see it. And then I would see myself reach out, grab the handle, open the front door of my house, see my driveway, and see the sidewalk. And then as I visualized with my eyes closed and I saw the sidewalk, I would recite my affirmations one more time. And here's exactly what they were. As I saw that sidewalk with energy and enthusiasm, I said, I am committed to running 52 consecutive miles on October 29th, 2009, no matter what. There is no other option. The reason this is a must for me is so that I can become the person that I need to be, who's capable of creating everything else I want in my life. And that third step of the affirmations, in order to follow through with this commitment, I will read the non-runner's marathon trainer and implement the training plan to a T, whether I feel like it or not, no matter what. And as I affirmed that, I generated these positive emotions to go for that run. And I visualized going, running out the front door onto the sidewalk. And as I visualized, I would smile and take some deep breaths. Imagine I was running. That only took me about 2 minutes, James, to do that. But here's what happened. This is how this works in real time, y'all. And you can apply this to any area of your life. Simply, when the alarm went off at 7 a.m. on my phone, I didn't do what human nature was, which is like, I don't feel like it. I'll do it tomorrow. And if you're listening or watching this, you can relate to that, right? You're like, oh, it's time. I said I was going to do it. I was all fired up, but now I don't feel like it. I'm scared. It's out of my comfort zone. I'm tired, right? But the power is that I didn't mentally rehearse not doing the thing. So it's almost like through visualization, that mental rehearsal, I programmed my subconscious mind and my nervous system almost like a robot, like a computer program. So when the alarm went off in real time, I stood up, went in my closet, got dressed, went to the front door, opened the front door. And as soon as I saw the sidewalk, those affirmations and that energy filled me up. It flowed through me. And I was like, let's go. And I went for that run. And I want to circle back to your original question of one of your first questions, how did you become committed, Hal? This is one of the most effective processes, using the miracle morning, combining the savers, right? Reading a book that tells you what you need to do based on someone who's accomplished what you're trying to accomplish. Then creating affirmations that follow those 3 steps. Step 1, what are you committed to? Number 2, why is it a must for you? Number 3, what are you going to do and to ensure you follow through? Then visualizing, mentally rehearsing yourself doing the thing in a peak state. And then you see how this all sequences together. So now when it's time, you do it. And the final S in the savers is scribing, which is a fancy word for writing or journaling. And every day you journal your progress, right? You keep track of the things that you're doing. And so that you see the progress and you keep generating momentum and you get further and further. And one day you look back and your rear view mirror syndrome is a lot different. You go, oh, I am a disciplined person. I do follow through with my commitments. I can do anything. Let's go.
Man, the meaning that you ascribe to things, similar to when you had cancer, it is so empowering to hear the way that you approach, the hardships that you've been through in your life. And I feel for me, visualization is almost like the mental rehearsal aspect of, I've already been there. I never considered myself a runner as well. And so if I'm going to run the next morning, I'm going to visualize at the end of my day, I'm sitting in bed and I'm thinking, I want to run 8 miles tomorrow. I've never ran more than 4 miles. Don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to visualize as though, like you said, it's not just me finishing the miles, but it's also me when I'm 4 miles deep and I do not want to do it whatsoever anymore. And I'm continuing to follow through and visualizing that part of the overcoming the part that is the most disempowering and feeling like you just don't want to do it. I think Maxwell Maltz was someone, psychocybernetics, and then Joe Dispenza, they both talked about how visualization, mental rehearsal is almost more powerful than actual rehearsal. Like actual mental practice is more powerful. When I found that out, it was this awakening of whether I'm trying to get someone on the podcast or just how do I want to go through this podcast. Just you're not only seeing those opportunities more in real life when you've mentally rehearsed it, but you're also, making it easier because then it's not so unfamiliar to you. And so it's a lot easier for you to actually go through those things.
Yeah. Well said, dude. That 100%.
For you, the book has reached millions of people. 30,000 plus reviews on Amazon. I mean, you're impacting so many people, and I'm excited to see what it goes into because there's the series, the movie, the book. I mean, the app, like everything that you have going on, and the new version of the book as well. What do you feel from all of the book? Obviously, there's the savers. What do you feel is like the core message of what you're trying to instill into people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that there's two of them.
Okay.
The first is this is one of my most fundamental affirmations in my own life, and when I share with people, and I said it earlier, not in the form of an affirmation, but in the form of an affirmation that anyone listening, I would encourage you to like write this down and say this to yourself every day. I am just as worthy, deserving, and capable of accomplishing anything I want in my life as any other person on earth.
Mhm.
And if you want to go a little further, say, and I will prove that today with my actions.
Mhm.
Right? Which is that little last piece I added later on in life after I read the first part of the affirmation, because it was like, that's the accountability piece. That's the like, oh yeah. And like, yeah, it's one thing to know you're just as worthy, deserving, and capable, but what are you going to do with that? Like, if you just
Yeah.
know it and don't do anything, life's going to stay the same. But if
Mhm.
you know it, oh yeah, and I'm going to prove it to y'all. I'm going to prove it to myself today with my actions, right? So that's the first message that I think that the book talks about. Actually, I'm going to give you three of them. That's the first. The second is, if you don't change the way you're living your life, nothing will change, right? And I have a chapter in the book called the 95% reality check.
Mhm.
And some people, I think, got offended by this. You know, it is what it is. Can't please everybody. But it was based on a Social Security Administration study that said at the end of or after retirement, uh, only 5% of people are able to like take care of themselves financially, and
Mhm.
and have a like financially stress-free life, like financially free life. And 95% are dependent on the government, on their family, or they're homeless, right? Like, and so I give that statistic and I say, look, I said, let me ask y'all a question. To the person reading, let me ask you a question. Do you think that any of those 95%, or at least most of them, do you think that they planned on being in that state where they were financially dependent on government and family? And the answer is, of course not. I mean, I'm sure some people, were like, my life sucks and it's going to forever be this way. Like, okay. But most people, right, when you're like young, you're like, I can do anything. I'm going to change the world and I'm going to be successful and I'm going to achieve my dreams. But what happens is we get into this rut of settling for the minimum possible necessary to survive. I'm just going to do enough to make enough money to barely pay my bills, maybe even go in credit card debt, right? But we make enough to put a roof over our head, maybe, but not to really get ahead. And so that was that 95% reality check, is like, hey, now is the time to draw your line in the sand and realize if you want your life to be better, you have to get better. And that leads into the third point, which is the Miracle Morning is a daily personal development ritual that enables you to every single day become a better version of yourself, of the person you were last night when you went to bed. And as you get better and you develop your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual capabilities, as you become a better version of yourself, you become more capable of creating, sustaining, even attracting the people, the resources, the opportunities, and just creating the success that you really want in your life. But it all roots back to you making the decision that you're just as worthy, deserving, and capable, that you have to decide to draw your line in the sand now. You can't wait any longer. And you've got to dedicate time each day to your personal development to become the person you need to be, who's capable of creating the life, the success, the fulfillment that you want in every single area.
Yeah, Hal, I am so grateful for your work. It is so empowering. There's a reason it resonates with so many people. I could ask you a trillion more questions, but there's one last question I want to ask, and I ask every guest, and
Yeah.
it really instills what you're saying right there. Is we are grown up with so many beliefs that we did not ask for that limit us in our lives. The computer I'm speaking to you on, everything in this world was once an idea in someone's mind. That always blew my mind, that it can be put into the world simply but just by a thought. And so my question to you is, what belief are you currently unlearning?
That's a good one. That's a great question. What belief am I currently unlearning? I would say that it's around my mental my cognitive abilities. So I went through 750 hours of
Yeah.
chemotherapy, and that is, toxic poison. It also potentially saved my life, but as it kills the cancer, it's killing brain cells.
Mhm.
And 700 hours of chemo um, was detrimental to my cognitive ability, like memory, my creativity, my thinking. Like most of the time when I try to think of like, okay, I need to record a podcast today, what should I talk about? The old me would have been like, had 100 ideas, and
Yeah.
the new me's like, I'm blank. I've got nothing. And that's been really hard in my line of work where I'm trying to help people and impact people, and my brain does not work like it used to. So the limiting belief that I desperately need to unlearn, that I am unlearning, is that my cognitive function is not limited; it is limitless.
Yeah. I love it how all your links and to your books and everything that you have going on will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time.
James, thanks, brother.